Hello, everybody, and welcome to this talk with Joanne Callan. We have how to feed your body and mind. Now, Joanne is a holistic therapist and wellbeing coach. She is also a relaxed kids coach and has been since 2012, baby mindful coach, charge up coach, teaching the teens, and also is our trainer throughout Ireland. So delighted to welcome Joanne, because healthy eating has been your speciality for many years, hasn't it? So
Absolutely.
would you like to, what does it mean to feed our body and feed our mind?
For me, those two are, they're so interconnected. We cannot separate one from the other. And when we talk about healthy eating, what we often think of is, salad, lettuce, like rabbit food, those are the kind of stereotypes. And yet what I work with clients and with young people, even through our charge up programs and right through all, because our relationship with food begins as babies. And that whole experience and how we see food, it's about nurturing ourselves, it's about nourishing ourselves. It's such a complex relationship. And yet I think, culturally, societally, we've kind of got it quite wrong, despite that we talk about being healthy so much. I would much prefer that people had a healthy relationship with food, which is very different than just eating healthy food. And I think that's something that we really need to support our young people with. Some of my friends who eat the healthiest diet, inverted commas, and they watch their macros and they count their calories, and it's all very, it would look great. Like it's the diet that maybe we aspire to want to eat, actually come at it from an incredibly unhealthy place. So it's still about control. It's about, kind of what they can control in their lives, obsession. It becomes as unhealthy as almost the person who's eating the junk food. And it's like, and with all those words, healthy, unhealthy, I like to put them all in inverted commas, because I'm not kind of sure what exactly, if we actually even have a grasp of what we mean when we're talking about that. And, there can be an image that we look at the young person who perhaps maybe is overweight or whatever, and we look at the thin person, we automatically assume that thin young person is healthy just because their BMI is okay, and yet actually they could be really unhealthy. We don't look at their skin, we look at their eyes, we look internally at their digestive habits. Like there's just so much. So how do we feed body and mind? I think we see them both totally interconnected, and we recognize, in the Relaxed Kids Magic Box book, there's the beautiful visualization around brain food. And so we recognize that actually food is everything that we put in our bodies, and we feed our mind with our words, with our language, and we feed ourselves physically and I guess emotionally and energetically with physical food. And yet our experience of that food is often so tainted by feelings of guilt and shame and good and bad and all of that. So it's a fundamental part of who we are.
It is. It is incredible, and it's so easy. Like food and struggles is so common, isn't it? Particularly with females, but males as well.
Absolutely.
And it's just it's like if you the relation, like if we eat because emotionally eat, it's like, okay, so if we have a food addiction when we emotionally eat, it's like when we drink too much or we have an alcoholic addiction, you can just stop because you don't need it. But with food, it's doubly more difficult because we need food to live.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like something you can just say, right, you've got to stop, like stop the thing that's harming you, because the thing that's harming you is also good for you. So it's really quite a twist.
It is. And the program that I kind of run in that area is called Be Balanced for that reason, because it is about finding balance with these things. And I would really love if we could shift from counting calories, perhaps maybe, to looking at the chemicals that we're taking in our food, and how that impacts our mood and how it impacts how our body processes everything. Because, we cannot separate the human body or mind. Every organ is interconnected. There's cause and effect with absolutely everything that we do. And, the kind of 80s culture of introducing diet foods, for example, like diet should just be what we eat. It's the food that we take in. It has become totally linked to low calorie. Those, however, are two very different things. And nutrition and diet and calories, they're so separate. And exactly as you said, the treatment for anyone with an eating disorder is very, very different to anyone else, to any other protocol, because we have to get to a place where we heal our relationship with the food rather than take the food out of the picture altogether. And I think that's vitally important. It's not, the question isn't just about what we eat, it's how we eat and who we are as eaters. Why are we eating? It's the who, what, where, when, and why is so much more than just the what I'm eating. What I'm eating is only one piece of the picture. How I feel about what I'm eating, how I feel about myself, how stressed I am when I'm digesting food, will have a direct impact on how I simulate that food, how I utilize it, how I, all of those levels. So our mind and our body are so interconnected on this journey.
So, and that's quite interesting, because our mind and our body is interconnected, but also our gut has a big link to our mental health even.
Absolutely.
So can you talk about the gut?
Yeah, the brain in our gut, I guess. And the beauty of science is that we're always learning new things. I think, however, there is perhaps a delay for some of those new things to become quite mainstream and to be, a normal everyday part of our conversation. I was listening recently to a podcast where they were talking about, for many hundreds of years, someone had said that men had more teeth than women. And then, and this was kind of just commonly accepted that men had more teeth than women, until someone came up with the really bright idea of, let's just count the teeth. Instead of just blindly accepting this theory, let's look and actually count the teeth. And no, men don't have more teeth than women. And so there's a lot of science that is actually outdated, and yet we still hold on to it. And we're making huge leaps in terms of understanding the gut-brain connection and just how important our gut microbiome is. Serotonin, one of our feel-good hormones, anywhere between kind of 70 and 90% of that is produced in our gut. And we need our gut bacteria for that. So, a lot of the time when we're talking about mental health, I think it's really important that we look at some of those things, like perhaps anxiety, as a symptom rather than a problem in its own right. Could it be a symptom of poor digestive health? And a lot of the children and young people that I work with actually also, along with suffering with anxiety, also suffer with constipation or perhaps irritable bowel syndrome. We talk all the time, and it's so deeply connected to our conversation around our gut feeling, and what that's all about. So this is all very new in terms of our actual discovery of it. We talk now about, for years it was accepted we had one brain and it lived here. We now know that we have a brain in our gut and indeed a brain in our heart. And science, and it's how we change those and how we apply those in. So I totally, I'm a huge subscriber to looking at that information that does the connection between our gut health and our mental health and our gut microbiome. And at the moment, that is now as we become much more sterile in our everyday world, I think it's really important that we're looking and making sure that we're also getting our healthy, friendly bacteria into our gut.
So you're basically saying our gut affects our mood.
Yeah, absolutely. It's scientific. Like it's not just a
Somebody
theory.
coming up with an idea.
Yeah.
Somebody has counted those teeth.
Yes, somebody has, and they've went, yeah, absolutely. We have this, and you talk about us being emotional eaters. That goes to another level because our food, the food choices that we make will differ depending on how we're feeling. And I also play a joke, kind of play about with the words that I want everyone to be an emotional eater. I want people to be passionate about food and excited about food and, to really allow themselves to enjoy food, because how often have we eaten the bar of chocolate and completely overrode that whole experience of, we really wanted the bar of chocolate. Bar chocolate's really lovely and it's delicious. And then we overshadow it with guilt, going, I shouldn't have eaten that. Why did I eat that? And so we replace all the endorphins that the bar of chocolate, possibly produced. We reduce, we exchange that for cortisol, adrenaline, guilt. And we know that our body also then processes food. If our body's high on cortisol levels, the food gets stored as fat more readily, and all of that can be impacted by the thoughts that we're having. And that's back to the brain food visualization in the magic box, where our words are so important. So what we eat is important, and how we feel about what we eat is equally as important.
And the way that we eat, the mindset that we're eating. I'm sure I read, I think it might have been an Indian guru or something that said, if you are eating in an angry state, that food can become poison in your body.
Yeah, it feeds your anger, literally.
It's quite extreme, but it's quite interesting.
And the science is now catching up with those types of thinking, because we know that, when our body is high in stress hormones, then, it digests differently. Like the very first, if we look at, the very basic biology, I mean, my first memory of fight and flight being taught in secondary school and doing GCSE biology was that fight or flight affected your digestive system. You either, when you went into fight or flight mode, you either tightened up and held everything in, or you let everything go. And, so if we're eating in stress mode, which guilt is always going to be a stress release, that's always going to feel stressful in the body. If we're eating from that place of stress, then our body's digesting from a place of stress, and it can never optimally digest if it's digesting from fight or flight mode. So, and the science, thankfully, now is kind of showing us that. And the other really interesting kind of aspect of that is that if we eat very quickly, so we're so conditioned for convenience foods and how quick we can get food and fast food culture. If we aren't engaged in the process, then we're missing out some of our key digestive elements. So I often say to people, where does digestion begin? And they go, well, in your gut. Well, digestion actually begins in your eyes and your nose, because that's what sends the signals to the brain to say there's food coming. So if that process is sped up, we're actually not really engaging in our eating process, because we're not smelling the food to stimulate the digestive juices. We know when we smell fresh bread or melted chocolate or any of those things that are all our mindfulness activities that we connect with our food. Even just as I'm talking about it now, saliva is starting to form in my mouth. And that's your digestive, your digestion begins with your saliva. So the message has to go from our eyes, where our food looks visually appealing, our sense of smell. It then goes into our mouth, we chew it. Again, back to those teeth thing, the age-old story would be that we need to kind of chew our food 33 times or something like that. How many of us actually do that? But what we often do is that we swallow food that is not digested in the way that it should be by the mouth. So we're asking our gut to do more work, and that's always going to put our body under stress.
Yeah, and make it tired.
And make it tired, and mean that we're not actually getting the nutrients from the food that we need, because the process is just being kind of shortcutted and sped up.
So in terms of getting lots of that microbiome, what yogurt and fermented foods and
absolutely. I mean, I think our diet, again, inverted commas there, the food that we eat on a daily basis needs a little bit of an overhaul. And back to, Hippocrates, like, thousands of years ago, saying, let food be your medicine and medicine be your food. There are foods that I take in the morning. For example, I take celery juice. And a really interesting fact that I discovered just this week, actually, is that in the Brehon laws in Ireland, which were like pre-colonization, one of the things that was said was that every sick person was given an unlimited supply of celery. And, which is just like, it was built into the laws of the land. And, we look back at what people will share memories of lining up for cod liver oil, and, food supplements and food has always been as kind of a solution for us. It's what our body needs. So in terms of those foods, I think if we look at the food that we're taking in, it doesn't need to be that we like everything that we take in. Sometimes we just take it. Like I don't particularly enjoy celery juice in the morning. I'm okay. I'm impartial to it now. However, I take it because I actually know that it gives my body a really good supercharge of nutrients. And the reason, I guess, superfoods change all the time. Like we're told, oh, we need to be doing this and we need to be doing that. For me, the reason that celery juice kind of resonated with me was because it could be grown here. I think we also need to look at shifting to local, sustainable food sources that we can produce in our own countries, and what's local to us.
And also, as many colours, have the whole Relaxed Kids 7 colours in your food if you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get a rainbow.
Get a rainbow, and get dirty, get into soil if it's possible at all. And it definitely, I think when we start talking about fermented foods, people sometimes struggle because it's like, oh, that doesn't taste good. But absolutely, kind of starting with yogurt. And I'd also be cautious of some of the commercial brands of probiotic food, because they also a lot of the time contain very high amounts of sugar, which counteracts the reason that you're taking them in the first place. So it's being mindful with those. And just maybe changing one thing, introducing one new thing, and doing it from a place of, I want to nourish myself to be the healthiest that I can be, rather than from a place of deprivation, which is never going to feel good, and it's never going to last for a particularly long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what simple things can parents do to encourage children to develop a healthy relationship with their food?
I think the key is looking at your own, first and foremost, looking at your own relationship with food. What stories have you built up over the years? And one of our other speakers, who I know has been doing a session this week, Sarah Ockwell-Smith, her book, Gentle Eating, is an incredible foundation for that. And it just makes so much sense. So it's a really lovely introduction into eating psychology, into creating good eating habits. And I know I've used the word there, good and bad, but that healthy relationship with food, rather than food being categorized as good or bad. That would be my next kind of suggestion, is to endeavor to do your best to separate food from emotions, in a sense, about this is good for me and this is bad for me. Food is simply food. It doesn't have moral judgment. It just is what it is. And everything is fine in moderation. So, it's about balance. It's about moderation. And I know a lot of parents struggle, perhaps particularly if their children are on the autism spectrum, where they maybe struggle with sensory issues around food and tastes and textures, and their diet can be very limited. And indeed, many young people now, their diet's very limited. I would say start with their sense of smell. A lot of the time when children don't really have a very varied diet, varied interest in food, a lot of it is actually because they're struggling with their sense of smell. And that's quite complex, in that our smell is 90% of our taste. So sometimes children will have a heightened sense of smell, and sometimes they'll have an undersensitive sense of smell. So everything kind of tastes the same. So that feeling that we get when we have a cold, for example, where nothing like tastes right. And it would be very difficult to develop an interest in food if everything just tastes the same. So looking at their sense of smell, and I guess get them engaged in food, grow something, anything. Whether it's, I grew some pea shoots there a few weeks ago, literally from a bag of peas that I picked up in the supermarket, and I grew them on the windowsill.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely. The simplest thing. Bag of marrowfat peas. I picked them up in the supermarket. They were actually lying at the back of a cupboard that I was clearing out the first couple of weeks of or the COVID time. And I found this bag of peas, and somewhere I had seen that kind of, where they're all going around the bits that you can grow, like celery, you can grow from the stalk of celery and all that kind of stuff. So this is a bit of a kind of just dodgy bag of old peas that were lying in the back of the cupboard. And I popped them in some soil, and for the first kind of 4 or 5 weeks, when I wasn't going out shopping as much, and I had planted some other seeds, but like obviously it took a bit longer. But within like 2, maybe 3 weeks, I had like full grown pea shoots. So I was having those in salads every day. And even if the children don't eat them, they can engage in the process of growing something. And they're much more likely to eat it. So, windowsills, we can do lots on windowsills. And there
sprouts,
can be...
I grow a lot of just mixed sprouts, like lentils, and I guess there'd be peas or just seeds.
Yeah. So
sunflower seeds. What's the other one? Sunflower and not sesame, the pumpkin seeds.
Pumpkin
just
seeds,
mixed.
Yeah.
So
just
delicious.
Yeah, and you can
just a couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. They sprout really, really easily, and children can get fascinated with that. So I think if we want to transform our health and transform our relationship with food for both body and mind, and there's an incredible sense of joy that comes from producing your own food. It's an innate, it's part of who we are. And so I think if we kind of want to revolutionize food, we need to connect with the food and the source of our food, and follow that journey through from production to plate, even in the smallest little elements.
But there is definitely that feeling that you get where you're having an emotional reaction in your body, and you reach for chocolate, or you reach for chips, or that thing, buttered toast, or the thing.
Absolutely.
What do parents, teenagers, because it does start with the adults, doesn't it? Because they, as you said, learning our own difficult habits around food, and then helping children manage theirs. In that moment of emotion, what do you do?
Well, sometimes I reach for the bar of chocolate and I eat it and I enjoy it. And other times I'll kind of sit with that and go, well, what's this really about? And if I am doing that, I try to. I mean, we don't always get these things right. What I will try to do is allow myself to really enjoy the bar of chocolate. So rather than like just stuffing it in and it being gone in like 10 seconds, actually allow that to last for like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I often talk about like the Willy Wonka, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory effect when it comes to eating chocolate, that, he enjoyed the pleasure of every little morsel, like every single bite was enjoyed. And how many of us, let's take a packet of sweets, for example. I mean, there's like, maybe maximum about 2 handfuls if you put the sweets in, and you can absolutely eat a bag of sweets in 2 handfuls very easily. Like you can, you pop them in, your mouth's full, you chew them and they're gone in, and that can take about 30 seconds. slow down with it. I would say slow down. And if you are reacting emotionally and you feel like, whether that is, the bar of chocolate, the packet of crisps, the pizza, the glass of wine, allow yourself to actually really enjoy it. And you might find that you'll use it then as a signpost to what actually is the problem. And oftentimes we feel that there's something that we want and we deny ourselves, and then we eat something else instead, and then we deny ourselves even more, and eventually we've eaten, like, there's a bit of a joke that goes around in the eating psychology world where Joanne wanted a chocolate chip cookie, so she had a rice cracker instead. Then she had 3 rice crackers. She still wanted the chocolate chip cookie, so she had something else. And it's like, well, just let it be. Take the judgment out of it. And take the judgment out of it, allow ourselves to have it. And then if we're doing that perhaps more frequently, because what often happens is we eat the one biscuit, and because we feel guilty about it, we try to cover the guilt over with eating like the packet of biscuits.
To get rid of them.
Yeah. So we just, we do it all. Whereas if we allow ourselves to enjoy the bit that we're doing and listen to those cravings in our body, they can be an incredible signpost. I was working with a client once who, had a real kind of urgency for crisps, and she often find, and I was asking her what was it that she liked about it. It was the crunch, and it was, it was the experience of it. And then we recognized, I said, okay, well, is there anger there? Because anger is a kind of a crunchy emotion. And she recognized that actually, yeah, she was more likely to do it, to reach for the bag of crisps when she was feeling angry. So that became our signpost of what she maybe needed to look at and work through.
So really try and identify the feeling that that food is calling to be noticed and seen. Yeah. And then often when you sit with that feeling and notice the need for that chocolate crisp will go, but then maybe you can still enjoy a few, loaded with all the feelings.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's absolutely, our cravings can be very significant signposts for us in terms of where we perhaps need to go on our healing journey. That said, with children, it can be difficult if they want like the packet of sweets. Well, what emotion are you feeling right now that you want the packet of sweets? And that's, that's not necessarily going to work with children. So what I would say is just take then the guilt out of it. So, the idea of things being treats or things that we only have at particular times, they just become a balanced part of how we eat and what we're doing.
And continue to make sure we can eat as many colourful things as possible.
The colours, absolutely. Nourish body and mind, and stick with the colours. Eat the rainbow. And there's another fascinating idea where our natural products, natural food stuff, gives us clues as to what they're for. So, for example, tomatoes are good for our heart, but if you cut a tomato and you see the chambers and you see, they're kind of quite like a heart. Broccoli and cauliflower.
Walnuts for brain.
Walnut for the brain. Broccoli and cauliflower for the lungs. And we look at all the little bronchioles. Like we're just so connected with this stuff. So I would, as I said, one of my kind of things is, count chemicals instead of calories. Take food back as natural as it possibly can be, for at least some of the time. Look, we live in a 21st century world. It's not possible to do this all the time. But our body responds really well when we take some small actions and focus on that. Is my relationship with food healthy, as opposed to, am I just eating healthy food? Because that's only one piece of the jigsaw puzzle.
Absolutely. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're so
welcome. I hope
welcome.
Everybody's got lots of little tips for themselves and their children and teens. Thanks, Joanne. That's fantastic.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Renata. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.